The UNS Retribution dropped out of hyperspace 3 hours too late. Captain Han Ji-woo stood on the bridge, staring at the screen that showed Nova Prime Colony. Something was wrong. The communications channels were dead silent. No chatter from the mining stations. No signals from the residential sectors. No automated beacons, nothing. "Run a full scan," Ji-woo said to his crew. His voice was calm, but his stomach twisted with worry. Nova Prime was home to 50,000 people. It should have been lighting up their sensors like a Christmas tree. Commander Lee Dae-hyun worked at the intelligence station, his fingers moving fast across the controls. "Sir, I'm picking up power readings from the colony, but no life signs. No movement. No ships in orbit." "That's impossible," Ji-woo said. 50,000 people don't just vanish." "Sir, there's debris," said the tactical officer. "Looks like weapons fire. Multiple impact points across the colony." Ji-woo's jaw tightened. "Battle stations. Take us in slow. Eyes open, everyone." The Retribution moved toward Nova Prime like a shark circling wounded prey. As they got closer, the sensors painted a clearer picture, and it was worse than anyone imagined. Whole sections of the colony were torn apart. Buildings collapsed. The defensive shield generators were smoking ruins. "Sir, I'm detecting one life sign," Dae-hyun said suddenly. "Faint, but it's there. In the research sector, underground level." "Get a team ready," Ji-woo ordered. "Full combat gear. I'm going with them." 20 minutes later, Ji-woo walked through the ruins of Nova Prime, and he understood what hell looked like. Bodies lay everywhere. Men, women, old people, young people. They hadn't died quickly. Whoever did this had taken their time. The walls were scorched with energy weapons. Blood stained the streets. Ji-woo had been a soldier for 20 years. He'd seen combat. He'd seen death. But this was different. This was murder on a scale that made his hands shake with rage. "Captain," one of his Marines called out, "you need to see this." Ji-woo followed the Marine into what used to be a school. Children's drawings still hung on the walls. Pictures of families, of spaceships, of alien friends. Little handprints in paint. In the corner, small bodies lay where they'd tried to hide. Ji-woo closed his eyes for a moment. He was a professional. He was a captain. He couldn't break down. Not here, not now. But God, he wanted to. He wanted to scream at the universe for allowing this to happen. "Sir, we found the survivor." Dae-hyun's voice crackled in his helmet. "Research bunker section 7. Ji-woo ran. The research bunker was a reinforced structure built deep underground, designed to survive anything. The door was sealed tight, its emergency locks engaged. His team cut through with plasma torches. Inside, they found Dr. Kim Soo-hyun. She was a xenobiologist, 32 years old, barely alive. She'd been in the bunker for 3 days with no food and little water. When she saw them, she started crying. "They killed everyone," she whispered as the medics worked on her. "They came without warning. Big ships. Weapons everywhere. We tried to fight, but they cut through our defenses in minutes." "Who?" Ji-woo asked gently. "Who did this?" "Freelocks," Soo-hyun said, her voice shaking. "I saw their ships. I saw their soldiers. They weren't taking the colony. They weren't stealing resources. They were just killing, hunting. They laughed, Captain. I heard them laughing over the emergency channels while they murdered children." Ji-woo felt something cold settle in his chest. "The Vrelox Dominion, one of the powerful species in the Galactic Council. A civilization that had been in space for thousands of years. And they'd done this to a human colony. Why?" Ji-woo asked. "Why would they attack us?" "I don't know," Soo-hyun said. "We never had problems with them. We never even saw them before. They just came and started killing." Over the next 6 hours, Ji-woo's crew documented everything. They recorded the bodies. They collected the evidence. They found Vrelox weapons left behind, deliberately placed where they'd be found. It was a message, a statement. The Vrelox wanted everyone to know they'd done this. In the colony's administrative building, Dae-hyun found the security recordings. The last moments of Nova Prime were captured in crystal clear detail. Vrelox ships descending, Vrelox soldiers walking through the streets shooting anything that moved. The colony's governor trying to surrender, trying to negotiate, and the Vrelox commander putting a plasma bolt through his chest while he spoke. Ji-woo watched it all. He made himself watch every second. He owed these people that much. They died alone, afraid, calling for help that never came. The least he could do was witness their final moments. When it was done, when every piece of evidence was collected and every body was documented, Ji-woo stood in the colony's central square. The sun was setting on Nova Prime, painting the sky red and orange. It looked beautiful. It looked peaceful. It looked like a lie. "Sir," Daehyun said quietly. "What do we do?" Jiwoo looked at his second-in-command. Daehyun was young, only 30. He'd joined the military because he believed in exploration, in meeting new species and building a better future among the stars. His face was pale now. His hands trembled slightly. He'd lost that innocence today. "We go back to Earth," Jiwoo said. "We show them what happened here. We show the Galactic Council, and then we demand justice." "Do you think they'll give it to us?" Daehyun asked. "The Council, I mean. The Vreeloks are powerful. We're new. We've only been in space for 15 years. Jiwoo didn't answer right away. He thought about the children's classroom. He thought about the families who'd come to Nova Prime looking for a new life, a new start. He thought about how they'd died begging for mercy from creatures who had none to give. "If the Council won't give us justice," Jiwoo said quietly, "then we'll take it ourselves." Back on the Retribution, Jiwoo sat in his quarters and wrote his report. He used simple words, clean words. He didn't need to make it dramatic. The facts spoke for themselves. 50,000 dead. Men, women, children, all murdered by the Vreeloks' dominion without provocation, without warning, without mercy. He attached the evidence files, the videos, the recordings, the images, everything. Then he wrote one more message encrypted for Earth Command only. Request rules of engagement be lifted. This was genocide. Humanity must respond. He hit send and sat back in his chair. Outside his window, Nova Prime grew smaller as the Retribution accelerated away. Soon it would be just another star among millions. But Jiwoo would remember. Humanity would remember. And the Vreeloks would learn that some crimes don't go unpunished no matter how powerful you think you are. Ambassador Park Minji had been to the Galactic Council chambers many times. She'd given speeches about trade agreements and cultural exchanges. She'd debated border regulations and mining rights. She'd smiled and shaken hands or claws or tentacles with representatives from 47 different species. Today was different. Today she carried evidence of mass murder, and she was about to find out what justice meant in the galaxy. The council chamber was massive. It had to be, to hold representatives from so many different species. Some breathed oxygen, some breathed methane. Some needed water, some needed dry heat. The technology that allowed them all to meet in one space was incredible. Minji had once been amazed by it. Now she didn't care about any of that. "The council recognizes Ambassador Park Minji of Earth," said Councillor Threx. He was the council speaker, an avian species called the Kretok. His people had been in space for over 10,000 years. Threx himself was 4,000 years old. He looked like a massive eagle made of silver feathers, and his voice was deep and calm. Minji stepped forward. She was 45 years old, career diplomat, trained to be calm under pressure. But her hands wanted to shake. She forced them to be still. "Honored Council," she began. "1 week ago, the human colony of Nova Prime was attacked. 50,000 civilians were killed. Every single person in the colony was murdered." A murmur ran through the chamber. Some species made clicking sounds. Others whistled. The Galactic Council had laws against this kind of thing. Attacking civilian colonies was supposed to be forbidden. "I have evidence," Minji continued. She activated the holographic display. Images of Nova Prime filled the air above the council floor. Bodies in the streets. Destroyed buildings. The children's school. Some of the council members looked away. Others stared intently. Minji showed them everything. She didn't hold back. She wanted them to see what she'd seen, what Captain Jiwoo had documented. "The attackers were Vreeloks," Minji said. "They left their weapons behind. Their ships were recorded on our security systems. We have clear, undeniable evidence." She looked at High Chancellor Vorn, the Vreeloks representative. He sat in his section of the chamber, a being that looked like a cross between a lizard and a bear covered in thick scales. He was twice Minji's size and probably 10 times stronger. Right now he looked bored. "These are serious accusations," Councillor Threx said. "High Chancellor Vorn, how does the Vreeloks Dominion respond?" Vorn stood slowly. When he spoke, his voice was deep and rumbling. "The Vreeloks Dominion denies any involvement in this tragedy. We have no conflict with the humans. We had no reason to attack their colony." "Then explain the evidence," Minji said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Your weapons. Your ships. Your soldiers on our security recordings. Recordings can be faked, Vorn said with a shrug. Weapons can be stolen. Perhaps this was pirates using Vreelock's equipment. Perhaps it was a conspiracy to damage relations between our peoples. The Vreelock's dominion is innocent. Minji couldn't believe what she was hearing. We have DNA evidence. We have energy signatures from your weapons. We have clear video of Vreelock soldiers committing these murders. How can you possibly deny it? I do not need to explain myself to a species that has been in space for barely 15 years, Vorn said, his voice cold. The Vreelock's dominion has been a respected member of this council for 3,000 years. Our reputation speaks for itself. Your reputation, Minji said slowly, includes this attack. You murdered 50,000 innocent people. Alleged attack. Threx interrupted gently. Ambassador Minji, please remember council protocol. Accusations must be proven beyond doubt. I've shown you proof. Minji's voice rose despite herself. What more do you need? Agent Choi Hyunwoo watched from the observation gallery above the council floor. He wasn't supposed to be here. As Earth's intelligence operative, he usually worked in shadows, gathering information, making connections, learning secrets that diplomats would never hear. He'd been working for 3 weeks on this case ever since Nova Prime went dark. What he'd learned made him sick. The Vreelocks had done this before. 3 times in the last 100 years. Other colonies. Other species. Each time they'd attacked smaller, weaker civilizations. Each time the council had done nothing. Why? Because the Vreelocks were powerful. They had the 3rd largest military in the galaxy. They controlled vital trade routes. And most importantly, they paid protection money to half the species on the council. Hyunwoo had found the financial records. Carefully hidden, but there if you knew where to look. The Vreelocks bought votes. They bought silence. They bought the right to do whatever they wanted to whoever they wanted. And now they'd done it to humanity. On the council floor, the debate continued. Species after species stood up to speak. Most expressed sympathy for Earth's loss. Some talked about the need for a thorough investigation. A few suggested that maybe there'd been a misunderstanding, that perhaps the humans had provoked the attack somehow. Not one called for sanctions against the Vreelocks. Not one demanded justice. The council must vote, Threx finally said. All those in favor of opening an official investigation into the Nova Prime incident, with potential sanctions against the Vreelocks' dominion if evidence proves their guilt. Minji held her breath. 12 species voted yes. 35 voted no or abstained. The measure failed. However, Threx continued, the council recognizes that Earth has suffered a tragedy. We propose a compensation package of 100,000 credits, and we offer mediation talks between Earth and the Vreelocks' dominion to ensure peaceful relations going forward. Minji stared at him. Mediation talks? You want us to sit down and negotiate with the people who murdered our children? This is how civilized species handle disputes, Threx said. His tone was kind, almost gentle. War and vengeance are primitive responses. The Galactic Council has maintained peace for 10,000 years through dialogue and compromise. Compromise, Minji repeated. The word tasted like poison. You want us to compromise with murderers. Ambassador Minji, Threx said, and now there was a warning in his voice. You are young, both as an individual and as a species. You do not yet understand how the galaxy works. The Council has spoken. We recommend you accept our offer and move forward. Minji looked around the chamber, at species that had been in space longer than human civilization had existed, at beings with technology humanity couldn't even dream of, at a council that had just told her that 50,000 dead humans were worth 100,000 credits in a handshake with their killers. She thought about what Agent Hyunwoo had told her before this meeting, about the bribes, about the previous attacks, about how the council had become so corrupt that justice was just a word they used to make themselves feel better. I need to contact my government, Minji said quietly. Of course, Threx said. Take all the time you need. But Ambassador, I strongly advise you to accept the council's offer. Refusing it would be unwise. That night, in her quarters on the council station, Minji sat in the dark and composed her message to Earth. She chose her words carefully. This message would change everything. The council has voted against investigation or sanctions. They offer reparations of 100,000 credits and request mediation talks with the Vreelocks. Evidence is irrelevant to them. Political power is all that matters here. They expect us to accept this offer and forget what happened to Nova Prime. She paused, then added one more line. Recommend we decline all negotiations with the Vryloks. The Council has failed us. Humanity stands alone. Before she could send it, her door chimed. She opened it to find Counselor Threx standing there. Without his official robes, he looked smaller, older. Tired. May I come in? He asked. Minji stepped aside. Threx entered and sat down heavily. For a long moment, he said nothing. You're angry, he finally said. You think we're cowards. You think we betrayed you, didn't you? Minji asked. Threx sighed. It sounded like wind through feathers. Ambassador, I am 4,000 years old. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species destroy themselves through war. The Galactic Council exists to prevent that destruction. We maintain peace through compromise. Even when that means letting murderers go free? Especially then, Threx said. The Vryloks are powerful. If we sanction them, they might leave the Council. They might start a war. Thousands of worlds could burn. Millions could die. Is that justice? So 50,000 humans die and we're supposed to just accept it? To keep the peace? Yes, Threx said simply. That is how civilized species behave. We accept small injustices to prevent large catastrophes. Minji looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the weight of 4,000 years in his eyes. She saw the compromises he'd made, the deals he'd accepted, the injustices he'd allowed, all to keep the peace, all to maintain the Council. I'm sorry, Minji said. I can't do that. Humanity can't do that. Then you're making a terrible mistake, Threx said, standing up. The Vryloks will not forget an insult. If you reject the Council's offer, if you seek revenge, they will destroy you. And the Council will not protect you. We don't need your protection, Minji said, and we don't negotiate with murderers. After Threx left, Minji sent her message to Earth. Then she sat by her window looking out at the stars, wondering what humanity would choose. Peace and compromise or justice and war. She knew which one she hoped for. President Kang Seolgi stood before the United Earth Assembly, and the weight of 50,000 deaths pressed down on her shoulders like a physical thing. The assembly hall was silent. 200 representatives from every nation on Earth waited to hear what she would say. Outside, billions of humans watched on screens, waiting to learn if their government would accept the Council's offer or choose another path. Seolgi was 58 years old. She'd been president for 6 years. She'd dealt with economic crises and climate disasters and political scandals. She'd thought she'd seen everything. Then Nova Prime happened. Members of the assembly, she began, her voice steady and clear. 3 weeks ago, 50,000 of our people were murdered. Men, women, children. They were killed without warning, without mercy, without reason. The Galactic Council has seen our evidence. They know who did this. And they've decided that justice doesn't matter. She paused, letting that sink in. The Council offers us money, 100,000 credits. They offer us mediation talks with the Vryloks, the species that slaughtered our people. They tell us this is how civilized species handle disputes. They tell us to compromise, to forgive, to move on. Seolgi's hands gripped the podium. I say no. Humanity says no. The assembly erupted. Some representatives jumped to their feet cheering. Others shouted questions. The speaker had to call for order 3 times before the noise died down. We stand at a crossroads, Seolgi continued. We can accept the Council's offer. We can take their money and shake hands with murderers. We can show the galaxy that human lives are cheap, that you can kill us without consequence. Or we can remember who we are. She pulled up images on the screens around the hall. History lessons. Images from Earth's past. For thousands of years, our ancestors learned a simple truth. You don't negotiate with terrorists. You don't compromise with murderers. You don't make peace with people who target children. Because when you do, when you show them that killing works, that violence brings rewards, you guarantee they'll do it again. More images appeared. Wars fought, battles won and lost. The long, bloody history of humanity's struggle for justice. The Council thinks we're young. They think we're naive. They think we'll fall in line like every other species has done. They don't understand that humanity has never, not once in our entire history, accepted injustice without a fight. Seolgi's voice grew harder. The Vryloks killed 50,000 of us. They did it to make a point, to show us our place. They left their weapons behind so we'd know who did it. They wanted us to be afraid. They wanted us to submit. She leaned forward. They made a mistake. The assembly voted 3 hours later. It wasn't even close. 187 votes to 13. Earth would reject the Council's mediation. Earth would pursue justice on its own terms, and Earth would mobilize for war. Admiral Yoon Jae-min received the orders in his office at Space Force Command. He read them twice to make sure he understood correctly. Then he started making calls. Yoon was 63 years old, career military, commanding officer of Earth's entire space fleet. He'd spent the last 15 years building that fleet from nothing. When humanity first made contact with aliens, Earth had barely reached Mars. Now they had ships that could cross the galaxy. But could those ships fight? Yoon pulled up the intelligence reports on the Vrylox military. They were intimidating. The Vrylox had been fighting wars in space for 3,000 years. They had battleships the size of cities. They had weapons that could crack planets. They had more ships, more soldiers, more experience than humanity could ever match. On paper, it was suicide. But Yoon knew something the Vrylox didn't. Something the whole council didn't understand about humans. Humanity had been fighting wars since before they discovered fire. Every advance in human technology had immediately been turned into a weapon. When they invented the airplane, they weaponized it. When they split the atom, they weaponized it. When they reached space, the first thing they did was figure out how to fight there. The Vrylox had better technology, but humanity had better doctrine. Captain Han Ji-woo reported to Yoon's office the next morning. He looked tired. He'd been testifying before committees, showing the Nova Prime evidence over and over, reliving those terrible hours. But his eyes were clear and his voice was steady. "You wanted to see me, sir?" Ji-woo asked. "I'm giving you a fleet," Yoon said. 12 ships. Best crews we have. Your mission is to strike Vrylox military targets and cripple their ability to make war." Ji-woo blinked. "Sir, 12 ships against the entire Vrylox military?" "We're not fighting a traditional war," Yoon explained. He pulled up a star map showing Vrylox territory. The Vrylox are used to council warfare, territorial disputes, limited engagements, rules of engagement that protect civilians and minimize casualties. "They think war is a game with rules, and we don't?" Ji-woo asked. "War isn't a game," Yoon said flatly. "War is what happens when talking stops. The Vrylox think they can kill 50,000 of us and face no consequences. We're going to teach them otherwise." Over the next week, Earth's military mobilized faster than anyone thought possible. Ships that had been in dock for maintenance were rushed back into service. Weapon systems were upgraded. New tactics were developed. Tech specialist Nam Haru led the cyber warfare division. She was 30 years old, brilliant, and absolutely furious about Nova Prime. Her sister had lived there. Her sister's 2 children had attended that school Ji-woo found. Haru's team spent 72 hours straight breaking into Vrylox communications networks. It wasn't easy. Vrylox security was sophisticated, but Vrylox security was designed to stop other aliens, species that followed certain rules that had certain limitations. Nobody had ever tried to hack the Vrylox using human methods. Methods developed by people who'd been breaking into each other's computer systems since computers were invented. Methods that were creative, aggressive, and completely outside what the Vrylox expected. On the 3rd day, Haru broke through. Suddenly, humanity had access to Vrylox military communications, ship positions, supply routes, defense schedules, everything. "Got you," Haru whispered, staring at her screens. "Got you, you bastards." The intelligence changed everything. Now Yoon could see exactly where Vrylox forces were positioned. He could identify which bases were important, which supply lines were vulnerable, which commanders were competent and which weren't. He planned his campaign like a chess master, planning 15 moves ahead. The Galactic Council watched humanity's mobilization with growing alarm. Species that had dismissed humans as harmless newcomers suddenly realized that Earth had been building a serious military force. Ships designed not for exploration but for war. Weapons designed not for defense but for attack. Ambassador Minji received dozens of messages. Other ambassadors asking what Earth was planning. Council members urging restraint. Even some human colonies in neutral space begging the government to reconsider. She ignored them all. High Chancellor Vorn made one last attempt at communication. He sent Minji a message dripping with condescension. "Ambassador, your species is making a grave error. The Vrylox Dominion has crushed rebellions before. We have fought wars that lasted centuries. You cannot possibly hope to defeat us. I urge you, for the sake of your people, to accept the Council's generous offer while you still can." Minji wrote back one sentence: "We don't negotiate with murderers." Captain Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the Retribution, now the flagship of humanity's strike force. Around him, 11 other ships moved in perfect formation. The crews were ready. The weapons were armed. The target coordinates were locked in. "Sir," Commander Daehyun said quietly, "once we do this, there's no going back." "I know," Jiwoo said. He thought about Nova Prime, about the children's classroom, about Dr. Soo-Yun's testimony of Rilok soldiers laughing while they killed. "We're not going back." Earth's government had evacuated all human colonies near Vraylock space. Every civilian had been moved to safer territory. Whatever happened next, humanity's innocence would be protected. Now it was time to make sure the Vrylocks remembered what happened when you hurt those innocents. "All ships. This is Retribution Actual," Jiwoo said over the fleet channel. "We're going in. Our mission is clear. We strike hard, we strike fast, and we don't stop until the Vrylocks understand that humanity doesn't forget. For Nova Prime. For our children. For justice," 11 voices answered him. "For Nova Prime." The fleet entered hyperspace. Behind them, Earth held its breath. Ahead of them, the Vrylocks had no idea what was coming. Admiral Yoon watched them go from Earth Command. He'd fought in wars before. He'd sent people to die before. It never got easier, but this time he knew it was necessary. The Galactic Council had failed. The rules had failed. The system had failed. So humanity would do what it had always done when systems failed. They would take justice into their own hands. President Sulgi made one final broadcast to the people of Earth. "My fellow humans," she said, "we are about to fight a war. Not a war of conquest. Not a war for resources or territory. A war for justice. The galaxy will judge us for this. History will judge us for this. But I believe in my heart that we're doing the right thing. We're showing the universe that some crimes cannot be forgiven, that some evil cannot be tolerated, that humanity, young as we are, small as we are, will never bow down to murderers." She looked. The first Vrylok base died without ever knowing what hit it. Captain Han Jiwoo's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at exactly Oro 400 station time, when crew shifts were changing and defenses were at their weakest. Namharu's intelligence had been perfect. The base commander was incompetent, appointed for political connections rather than skill. The defense grid was outdated. The garrison was small. It should have been easy. It was a massacre. "All ships weapons free," Jiwoo ordered. "Hit them hard. Hit them fast. No mercy." The 12 human ships opened fire simultaneously. The Vrylok base's shields lasted exactly 43 seconds. After that, human railguns and missiles tore through metal and flesh like paper. The Vrylocks tried to fight back. They scrambled their defense fighters, activated their point defense systems, sent out distress calls. None of it mattered. By the time reinforcements could arrive, the base was rubble and the human fleet was already jumping to hyperspace. Total time elapsed. 18 minutes. Vrylok's casualties, 4,312. Human casualties, 0. High Chancellor Vorn received the news 6 hours later. He was eating breakfast, reviewing trade agreements, planning his day. When his aide burst in with the report, Vorn actually laughed. 12 ships, 12 human ships attacked one of our bases? He waved dismissively. They got lucky. Send a response fleet. Destroy them. Sir, the aide said nervously. There's more. While we were receiving reports from Base 7, 5 other bases came under attack. Vorn stopped laughing. 5? Yes, sir. Bases 2, 9, 14, 21, and 28. All hit within a 30-minute window. Casualties are still being counted, but early reports suggest over 20,000 dead. Vorn stood up slowly. How? How did humans coordinate 6 simultaneous strikes across our territory? We don't know, sir. Our communications network should have detected fleet movements. We had scouts monitoring human space. There was no warning. What the Vrylocks didn't know was that Haru's team had been inside their systems for a week. Human fleet movements were invisible to Vrylok sensors. Vrylok scout reports were being intercepted and altered. As far as Vrylok's intelligence knew, all human ships were still in Earth space, preparing for a defensive war. They had no idea that humanity had gone on the attack. Wing Commander Oh Min-seo led the fighter squadrons in the second wave of attacks. She was 28 years old, the best pilot in Earth's Space Force, and she flew like someone who had nothing to lose. Her squadron hit a Vrilox supply convoy heading toward their main fleet. The Vrilox escorts were massive battleships, heavily armed, designed to fight other capital ships in traditional line battles. They were perfect for council warfare. They were helpless against Minseo's tactics. Human fighters were small, fast, and packed with missiles. Minseo's squadron came in low and fast, using the convoy's own ships as cover. By the time the Vrilox escorts realized they were under attack, 3 supply ships were already burning. "Break by pairs," Minseo ordered. "Hit and run. Don't let them lock on." The Vrilox tried to respond with their own fighters, but they were slower, designed for different combat. Council warfare had rules about targeting supply lines. Council warfare had agreements about civilian casualties. Council warfare was civilized. Human warfare was not. Minseo's squadron destroyed the entire convoy in 40 minutes. 18 supply ships, 4 escorts, and hundreds of support crew. The Vrilox reinforcement fleet, waiting for those supplies, would now have to fight on half rations and limited ammunition. Commander Lee Dae-hyun coordinated the tactical operations from the Retribution. His job was to track all human forces, all Vrilox responses, and adjust the battle plan in real time. He watched the data streams flow across his screens. Every Vrilox ship position, every communication intercept, every casualty report. The picture they painted was clear. The Vrilox were losing. Badly. "They don't understand what we're doing," Dae-hyun said to Ji-woo. "They keep trying to form up for traditional battles. They're pulling ships back to defend key positions. They're following their doctrine." "Good," Ji-woo said. "Let them. Our doctrine is simpler. Find them, hit them, move on." In 72 hours, humanity destroyed or crippled 60% of the Vrilox forward military infrastructure. Bases blown apart. Supply lines cut. Communication networks compromised. The Vrilox military machine, built over 3,000 years, was being systematically torn apart by a species that had been in space for 15 years. The galaxy watched in shock. Every attack was broadcast live on open channels. Humanity made sure everyone could see. No censorship. No propaganda. Just raw footage of human ships tearing through Vrilox defenses like they weren't even there. Species that had dismissed humans as weak suddenly reconsidered. The Kretok military analyzed the battles and realized human tactics were completely outside their experience. The Thraxians, who prided themselves on their strategic thinking, couldn't predict what humans would do next because humans didn't fight by any logical pattern. They fought by instinct, by aggression, by a willingness to take risks that seemed insane, and they won. High Chancellor Vorn finally understood what was happening. The humans weren't trying to conquer territory. They weren't trying to win a traditional war. They were trying to break the Vrilox military's ability to fight, and they were succeeding. In desperation, Vorn sent a message to the Galactic Council, begging for intervention. "The humans must be stopped. They're attacking civilian targets. They're violating every rule of warfare. The Council must take action." Councillor Threx read the message and felt very old. "Chancellor Vorn, every target the humans have hit has been military. Your bases, your ships, your supply lines. They've been careful to avoid civilian casualties. They're following the laws of war better than you did at Nova Prime. But they're destroying us." Vorn shouted. "Yes," Threx said quietly. "They are. Perhaps you should have thought about that before you attacked their colony. The Council must intervene. Make them stop." "The Council voted not to sanction you for Nova Prime," Threx reminded him. "We voted to let this matter be resolved through negotiation. The humans are negotiating. Just not in the way you expected." Vorn's hands shook with rage. "Fine, I'll negotiate. I'll offer reparations. Better terms than the Council offered. Just make them stop the attacks." "You should speak to them directly," Threx said. "I believe Captain Ji-woo is in command of their fleet." Vorn contacted the Retribution. It took his communication staff 3 hours to break through human security protocols. When he finally got through, Captain Ji-woo's face appeared on his screen. Vorn had expected anger. He'd expected rage. He'd expected the kind of emotional response that he could manipulate, that he could work with. Instead, Ji-woo looked calm, cold, controlled. His eyes were like ice. "Captain Ji-woo," Vorn began, trying to sound reasonable. "This conflict has gone on long enough. Let us discuss terms. Let us negotiate a peaceful resolution. The Vrilok's Dominion is prepared to offer significant reparations for the unfortunate incident at Nova Prime. Incident, Jiwoo repeated. The word hung in the air like a curse. A tragedy, Vorn corrected quickly. A terrible tragedy. But surely we can find a diplomatic solution. This is how civilized species resolve their differences. Jiwoo was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was perfectly level. You murdered 50,000 of my people. You killed children in their schools. You laughed while you did it. You left your weapons behind so we'd know it was you. You wanted us to be afraid. Captain, I understand your anger, but I'm not angry. Jiwoo interrupted. I'm not emotional. I'm not acting out of revenge. I'm acting out of necessity. The Galactic Council failed to provide justice. So humanity will provide it ourselves. What do you want? Vorn demanded. What will it take to end this? Unconditional surrender, Jiwoo said simply. Your entire military stands down. Your fleets return to dock. Your bases surrender to human forces. You submit to war crimes tribunals for everyone involved in Nova Prime. Those are our terms. Vorn laughed. It was a bitter, desperate sound. You can't possibly enforce those terms. You have 12 ships. We have thousands. We've destroyed hundreds of your ships in 3 days, Jiwoo said. We've crippled your command structure. We've compromised your communications. We've cut your supply lines. You're not fighting with thousands of ships anymore, Chancellor. You're fighting with whatever we let you keep. The Council will never allow this. The Council, Jiwoo said. And now there was emotion in his voice. Cold fury. The Council told us to negotiate with you. The Council told us to accept money for our dead children. The Council chose politics over justice. So we chose war. He leaned forward. You wanted to know what humanity is capable of. You wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. Congratulations, Chancellor. You've taught us. You've taught us that the Council is broken. You've taught us that justice is something we have to take for ourselves. You've taught us that when someone kills our children, we don't negotiate. We don't compromise. We don't forgive. So what do? Vorn asked, his voice barely a whisper. We end them, Jiwoo said. You have 24 hours to surrender. If you don't, we jump to your homeworld. We establish a total blockade. Nothing in, nothing out, and we wait until you have no choice. The transmission ended. Vorn sat in the dark of his office, feeling the weight of 3,000. The Vrilok's Dominion surrendered 18 hours later. Captain Han Jiwoo stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the Vrilok's fleet power down their weapons and disengage their shields. Hundreds of ships built over centuries, symbols of 3,000 years of military might, all of them surrendering to a human fleet they outnumbered 50 to 1. Sir? Commander Daehyun said quietly. We're receiving surrender authorization codes from all Vrilok's military installations. They're standing down. Jiwoo nodded. He felt tired. Not satisfied, not victorious. Just tired. Transmit our terms. Complete disarmament. War crimes tribunals for everyone involved in Nova Prime. Permanent human observers in all Vrilok's military facilities. Reparations to be determined by Earth government. They're asking if they can negotiate the terms. No, Jiwoo said simply. These aren't negotiations. These are consequences. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. The Vryloks, one of the most powerful military forces in the Council, had been defeated by humans in less than a week. Species that had considered humanity insignificant suddenly saw them very differently. Ambassador Park Minji returned to the Galactic Council chambers 2 weeks later. The last time she'd stood here, she'd begged for justice and been offered money. She'd shown evidence of mass murder and been told to compromise. This time she wasn't begging for anything. The chamber was full. Every species had sent representatives. Everyone wanted to hear what Earth would say, now that humanity had proven they could back up their words with force. The Council recognizes Ambassador Park Minji of Earth, Counselor Threck said. His voice was different now, respectful, cautious. Minji stepped forward. She carried a data pad with her. She'd spent the last 2 weeks working with Agent Choi Hyunwoo, going through every piece of intelligence he'd gathered. Honored Council, she began. 3 weeks ago, I stood here and showed you evidence of genocide. You voted against justice. You offered us money and told us to negotiate with murderers. You said this was how civilized species behave. She looked around the chamber. I'm here to tell you that the system is broken. The Galactic Council, which claims to stand for peace and justice, has become a tool for the powerful to oppress the weak. Murmurs ran through the chamber. Several council members looked uncomfortable. I have evidence, Minji continued. She activated her datapad. Images and documents filled the holographic displays. The Vreelock's attack on Nova Prime was not their first massacre. Over the past 100 years, they've attacked civilian colonies belonging to 3 other species. The Kelvin Mining Station, the Proth Agricultural Collective, the Yurna Research Outpost, thousands dead in each attack. The murmurs grew louder. Some species looked shocked. Others looked away. And the council knew, Minji said, her voice cutting through the noise. The council had evidence. The council had testimony. But the council did nothing because the Vreelocks are powerful and the victims were weak. She pulled up more files. Financial records, communications, proof of corruption that Hyunwoo had spent months gathering. The Vreelocks weren't the only ones. The Draxian hegemony has been raiding smaller species for decades. The Korth Empire has been forcing other species into slave labor. The Vex Consortium has been stealing technology through violence. All council members, all protected by their wealth and power, all immune to consequences. High Chancellor Vorn wasn't present. He was in custody awaiting trial. But other council members, species who'd accepted Vreelock's bribes, who'd voted against justice, looked increasingly nervous. The Galactic Council has failed, Minji said. Not just Earth, not just Nova Prime. You've failed every species that trusted you to protect them. You failed every victim who believed the galaxy had laws that mattered. You failed your own principles. Councillor Threck stood slowly. Ambassador Minji, what is Earth proposing? Earth is withdrawing from the Galactic Council, Minji said. The words fell like bombs. We will no longer participate in a system that calls corruption diplomacy and calls cowardice civilization. We will no longer pretend that words on paper mean anything when powerful species can ignore them at will. The chamber erupted, species shouting, translators struggling to keep up with dozens of languages being spoken at once. The speaker called for order repeatedly. When silence finally returned, Minji continued. However, Earth is not withdrawing from the galaxy. We're establishing a new framework. We're calling it the Nova Accords. She displayed the document. Hyunwoo and a team of lawyers had spent weeks writing it. It was simpler than council law, more direct, and had real enforcement mechanisms. The Nova Accords are built on one principle, Minji explained. Actions have consequences. If you attack civilians, you face justice. If you commit genocide, you face justice. If you break the laws, you face justice. Not negotiations. Not compromises. Not bribes, justice. And who enforces this justice? Asked a Draxian representative nervously. Earth? Anyone who signs the accords, Minji said. It's not an empire. It's not Earth rule. It's a mutual defense agreement. If one signatory is attacked without provocation, all signatories respond. If one member commits atrocities, all members hold them accountable. You're describing war, Threck said quietly. Perpetual war. I'm describing accountability, Minji corrected. The Council has maintained peace by allowing the strong to prey on the weak. The Nova Accords will maintain peace by making sure everyone, strong or weak, faces the same consequences for the same crimes. She looked around the chamber. Any species can join. Any species can leave. But while you're part of the Accords, you follow the rules. And if you break them, humanity will be first in line to make sure you answer for it. The silence that followed was profound. 47 species, some ancient beyond human understanding, sat and absorbed what this meant. A species 15 years in space had just told them their entire system was obsolete, and they'd proven they could back it up. Over the next month, 12 species formally requested to join the Nova Accords. They were all younger species that had been victims, species that had watched the Council fail them just like it failed Earth. The Kelvin survivors who'd lost a mining station to Vreelock's attacks decades ago joined immediately. The Proth, who'd been told to accept reparations for their dead farmers, joined. The Yurna, who'd been forced to negotiate with the people who murdered their scientists, joined. Species that had suffered under the Council's broken system flocked to Earth's alternative. Captain Jiwoo returned to Nova Prime one last time. They'd built a memorial there, at the site of the school where he'd found those children's drawings. The memorial was simple. Just a wall with 50,000 names carved into black stone, each name lit up when you touched it, showing a picture of the person, their age, their dreams. Jiwoo walked along the wall slowly, reading names, Families, children, old people who'd come to Nova Prime for a peaceful retirement. Young people who'd come for adventure. All gone. Captain, a voice said behind him. Dr. Kim Soo-hyun stood there, the sole survivor. She looked healthier now, though her eyes still carried shadows. They told me you'd be here. I needed to see it, Jiwoo said, to remember why we did what we did. Do you regret it? Soo-hyun asked. The war? The deaths? Jiwoo thought about that. In 1 week, humanity had killed over 30,000 Vrylock soldiers, destroyed hundreds of ships, crippled an entire military force. By council standards, by the standards of civilized species, it was barbaric. No, he said finally. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the council failed so badly that war was the only option. But I don't regret what we did. These people deserve justice. The council says we're dangerous now, Soo-hyun said. They say humanity has shown its true nature, that we're violent, aggressive, uncivilized. Maybe we are, Jiwoo said, but we're also loyal. We protect our own, and we don't forget. The council can call that uncivilized if they want. I call it human. Admiral Yoon Jaemin retired a month after the war ended. He'd done his job. He'd built a military that could defend humanity. He'd led it to victory when defense wasn't enough. Now it was time to let younger officers take over. President Kang Sul-gi gave him a medal at his retirement ceremony. Admiral, you saved humanity. You showed the galaxy what we're capable of. I showed them what we're capable of when pushed, Yoon corrected gently. Now we need to show them what we can build. The Nova Accords, the new alliances, the peaceful future. That's harder than war, Madam President. But it's more important. Can we do it? Sul-gi asked. Can we actually create a better system? I don't know, Yoon admitted. But we have to try. Because if we just become another powerful species that uses force to get what we want, then we're no better than the Vrylocks. We'll have proven the council right. That power is all that matters. And justice is just a word. Ambassador Minji stood in her quarters on the council station, looking out at the stars. She'd submitted her official resignation from the Galactic Council. Tomorrow she'd leave for Earth to take up a new position as Secretary of the Nova Accords. A message chimed. Counselor Threx wanted to speak with her one last time. She let him in. The old avian looked even older now. Worn down by the events of the past months, I came to say goodbye, Threx said, and to tell you something. You were right. About everything. The council has become corrupt. We've maintained peace by ignoring justice.